Ladies and gentlemen, we're in for a big treat today. We've got an Air Force chap with us who had a remarkable career overseas and in Canada after the war was over. Mr. Honey, Frank Honey, Frank, if I may call you Frank.
You're shooting me.
Frank did everything there was to do in the Air Force except flap the plane's wings, and I think he tried that too. Anyway, Frank, you were born in England, though.
Yes, I was, yeah.
Yes, and but came here in a very young age?
Yes,
How
I was
old
4
he?
years old.
4 years old. Oh, that hardly counts as being English. You're Canadian right from the beginning, I'd say. Do you remember what part of England you were born in?
Yes, I was born in Cornwall.
Cornwall.
Southern Cornwall, or southern England, Cornwall, and a place called
Penzance?
Penzance is close to where my mother was born.
Oh, yes,
But,
yes,
I
Mousel.
just can't think of the name of it.
Mousel? No?
No, near Bodmin.
Near Bodmin? No, you got me. We'll move on to you coming to Canada at the age of 4. And where did you come to?
I brought a book with me. It's called Broken Ground.
Yes.
I just got this book recently,
Yeah.
and I wrote a little article about it.
Yes.
And it tells everything in there. If you would like to read that,
Yes? Okay,
and
sir.
it
I will
gives
read
the whole details
Okay.
of our story.
I recommend the reading of this book to all who have had any connection with the people that were involved in the soldier settlement scheme during the early 1920s. Our father and mother were placed on one of these parcels of land near Glenora on Vancouver Island, BC, in the late 1920s, with us, 4 kids, Edgar, Frank, that's you, Chrissy, and Frida. I can just remember the place and how Dad and Mom tried to make a go of things. But after a few short years, we left the place. Dad took a job with a logging company. He didn't care for that type of work. He found it too dangerous. After only a short while, he took a job with the railway, CNR, and remained with them for over 30 years. Dad spoke very little about his 3 years in France during World War I. Oh, your dad served in World War I.
And
All right.
two.
Although he was wounded more than once, I am sure that some of these World War I veteran stories were shared by our father. Dad also spent a few years in the Army during World War II, and that's by his son Frank, done in 1999. The book, yes, that's very interesting. I'd like to read that, Frank. There you are, sir. Now, so, excuse me. After your childhood, you grew up in B.C.
I grew up in B.C. and
Yeah.
was educated in British Columbia.
Yes.
And when I finished my basic education, I took a year's correspondence course on aeronautical engineering.
Oh, why did you do that? We're just interested a
Well,
lot.
the war had just started.
Oh, I see.
And
Okay.
I was always interested in airplanes anyway.
Yes, so you had
So,
your eye on...
Well, not the Air Force.
No?
Just on airplanes.
Oh, yes, okay.
So I took this year's course, correspondence course,
Yeah.
at Brisbane Aviation Company in Sea Island, British Columbia.
All right.
And from there, I applied to work for Boeing Aircraft,
Yeah.
but I got impatient waiting for them, so I joined the Royal Canadian Air Force in August 1941 when I just became 18 years old.
I see.
And,
And you still want to be near airplanes.
I wanted to be near airplanes.
Yeah, okay.
I got to tell you about my first flight in an airplane.
Yeah.
It was with a fellow by the name of Len Foggen at Sea Island. He was walking up and down the fence, advertising his little puss moth, open cockpit puss moth,
Yeah.
to fly passengers.
Oh.
So my brother and I, we just came from the interior of British Columbia. We were pretty well, you might say, back in the bush. We wanted to ride in this airplane. So we only had a couple of dollars. That was in the 30s, and money wasn't too good. So we beckoned him over, and he came over to the fence, and he said, well, we've only got $2, you know. He said, well, I'll take you to both of you in a single cockpit aircraft strapped in side by side and take you a little trip over Vancouver for $2.
For $2?
For $2, so we're both side by side in this cockpit. And of course, the wind whipping in our face.
Yeah.
And we did a tour over Vancouver, about, I'd say, maybe 15 or 20 minutes. And back when we landed, we rode our bicycles back home and told my mother about it. She could have throttled us. She says, you idiot, she says, go and fly in those stupid airplanes. You know. Anyway, that was my first flight as a civilian. And, of course, from there on in, I was just Air Force 100% for air mileage.
That hooked you really.
That hooked me, really hooked me there.
Yeah. Well, Frank, let me ask, just out of curiosity and your knowledge of airplanes, how much would the gasoline have cost for that $2 ride you paid for?
Nowadays,
Yeah.
I couldn't hazard a guess, but I imagine it would make a hole in a $50 bill.
I would think so, yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a very good story. Now, you were hooked on airplanes then, and you when you became the age, you enlisted.
Yes.
Eh? Yeah.
Yes, I just enlisted in Vancouver,
Yeah.
and I, because of my background training correspondence course,
Yeah.
I came in with a grouping immediately, which most of the boys didn't. They had to go to basic training in St. Thomas, Ontario.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I went right on to a bombing gunnery school. They were flying ferry battles
Yeah.
at that time, towing drogues, and that was
Yeah.
number 4 bombing gunnery school in Fingal, Ontario.
Mhm.
I took my basic training in, to learn my left foot from my right in
Yeah.
Toronto Manning Pool.
That was marching up and down.
Yes. This was when the last Toronto exhibition was on, and
Yeah.
we were housed in the known as the bullpen. We were
Oh,
upstairs and the cattle were
I know,
downstairs.
yes, yeah.
You probably heard a lot of stories about the bullpen.
Oh, indeed. Yeah.
Well, that's where I learned my left foot from my right.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you a little story about that. See, when I arrived at Toronto Manning Pool, I came in civilian clothes like I did today.
Yeah.
And I had a pair of white Oxfords on, and I
Yes.
thought I was pretty tiddly boy. And so I got my uniform, but no shoes.
Oh.
So here I am on parade with my blue uniform on and white Oxfords. Well, they kind of stuck out like a sore thumb, you might say. So the sergeant, our drill instructor, he said, "LAC, honey," he said, "don't let me see you on parade with those shoes again." I said, "I have no other shoes to wear." I said, "They haven't issued me with my right size yet." So he said, "Well, you better do something with them." So anyway, I went downtown and bought some blackening. When you ever tried to blacken white shoes, it
It's
makes
a
one
big order,
hell of
yeah.
a mess. So I ruined my shoes,
Yeah.
and a few days later, I did get a pair of
Of,
Air Force boots, and I was
issued,
upstairs then.
yeah.
So that was the story of my Manning Pool.
Yeah.
Then from Manning Pool, I went to number 16 Service Flying Training School on the British Commonwealth Air Training Plan at Hagersville, Ontario, where I had my first ride in a Mark I Anson aircraft, similar to what we're going to restore out here at the museum.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And that was my first ride in an airplane in the Air Force. And needless to say, it was certainly not my last.
No.
I was only there for about just a little over a year in Hagersville, Ontario, and I volunteered to go overseas.
Now, what was your training in Hagersville? To be a pilot?
No.
No?
I was a mechanic right
A
from day
mechanic
one.
right from day one.
From
Okay.
day one, I was a mechanic
Yes, you
because
were-
I had my grouping, you see, as
I
a
see.
aero engine mechanic.
I understand. Okay.
And so I worked on the airplanes there. Very inexperienced because these were real airplanes, they actually flew.
Yeah.
The ones I worked on before didn't fly.
No.
So anyway, we spent, as I said, a little over a year there, and then I volunteered to go overseas. Sailed out of Halifax here in December 1942.
Yeah.
I had my 20th birthday on the Queen Elizabeth going over to England.
Oh. Oh.
It took us 5 days to go over there.
Yeah. How many fellows with you?
The Queen
Couple
Elizabeth was,
thousand, yeah.
I would say, to me, there was 500,000.
Yeah.
That's what it seemed like.
Yeah.
They could only feed 2 meals a day. There was that many people on board the ship. One started early in the morning,
Yeah.
stopped at noon, then the other one started at noon, and later
kept
on.
going, yes, and all
it was
these
a continuous
cities
lineup.
That have, yeah.
But the first day was lots of lineup. Second day was a little bit less. The third day out, you could walk anywhere. Everybody was laying around sick as a dog.
Sick as a dog.
We went unescorted across to England because Queen Elizabeth was very fast. They had taken the gyros off her, and she could
Yeah.
travel very fast.
Yeah.
She was ahead of all the other ships.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we left Halifax and headed right south, and I was in my bunk. I remember actually the room I was in. I was in C4, which is
Yeah.
right at the bow of the ship,
Oh.
down on the bottom deck.
Yeah.
And right in the bow, and it was very, very rough.
Yeah.
So the second day out, or the first day out, I should say, of course, we didn't know where we were going. We knew we were going to England,
Yeah.
but we headed south. and I thought something was wrong with the ship because we were getting all this hot air coming down the vents.
Yeah.
And here I found out after we were down off the coast of Bermuda. We went straight south and then straight north
Yes,
up
right.
to Greenwich, Scotland.
Scotland, right.
But it was extremely rough. And the boat did travel fast, and we had a lot of boys from that never been on a ship in their life. They came
Yeah.
from the prairies and that.
Yeah, sure.
So they were desperately sick. My buddy, as a matter of fact, no relation of mine, but the same name as myself. We were in the same bunk together, or in the
Yeah.
same room together.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, there was 16 of us in a room that was made for two.
Two.
It was 3 stories high,
Yeah.
and he never got, after the second day, he never got out of his bunk. And I used to go to the kitchen and bring him dry bread and oranges, and that's
And
the only
oranges.
thing that kept him going until we got to the other side.
Oh, dear.
I kept in correspondence with this fellow. His name was Len Honey,
Yeah.
until he passed away here a couple of years ago.
Ah.
And we tried to sort back if we were relations anywhere, but
Yeah,
he came
you
from the
were.
northern part of England, I came from the southern. We couldn't connect
Yeah.
to either, and I was
So
together.
you remember that trip very clearly.
Oh, yes, yeah, oh, yeah. And,
Now, you got to England eventually.
we got to England or Scotland, and of course, she couldn't dock in Greenock
In
because
Greenock,
it's
no,
too big,
no,
so we had to
sure.
go by
By
motorboat
boat,
to the
they
shore.
took off, yeah.
And then my first posting in England was to Blackpool, quite a resort town.
Yes.
I spent the Christmas in Blackpool, and I only there till the new year. And then I was posted to number 430 Squadron, an Army an Army Co-op Squadron,
Yeah.
which had just finished flying the Lysander, and then we were switched to the Tomahawk aircraft,
Uh-huh.
which I have one here. This is a
Yeah, Tom, which one?
no,
This one?
beg pardon, no, I figured that. That's
Yeah.
the Hurricane.
Okay.
Tomahawk is a P-40, same as the Kitty Hawk. They
Oh,
use them
yes,
in
I remember.
Vancouver or in
Yes,
the West
okay.
Coast a lot.
Yeah.
I didn't bring a picture
Yeah.
of that. Anyway, we trained on those, but they were very ineffective.
Yeah.
So we switched to the Mark I Mustang,
Yeah.
American Mustang, which had the American engine in. They were not a good airplane for high level, but they were fine for low level, which our squadron did. Was what they call rhubarbs. They would take off from England and do low level attacks on different things, strafing over on in France, Belgium, Holland, and,
Yeah,
and the low
yeah.
the countries
Oh, yeah,
there
those
that they were,
countries, yeah.
the Nazis had taken over.
Yeah.
So we kept on, stayed with the Mustang for quite a while. And then I was posted to a Typhoon Squadron, which
Yeah.
was there.
Now, let me be clear, Frank, here on what you were doing actually yourself. You were maintaining these aircraft.
Yes, I was.
That was
Yeah.
what you were doing.
I was the
Yes,
engine
yeah.
man
Yeah,
on it.
man
We
on
were each technician was assigned to an airplane,
Yes.
and you kept that airplane.
That same airplane.
and the same pilot. So you got to know each other fairly
Very
well.
well, yes. And you got to know the airplane very
Oh yeah,
well.
well yeah. You know, it was
Sure,
with
it
my
was-
airplane like my car.
Yes,
You
exactly.
say, you wouldn't say number so and so. How's my airplane?
Yeah.
That's the way it
Yes,
was.
right.
And it was good. I thought that was good.
Oh, great way to
And
do. But it was kind of heartbreaking when it came back full of holes or something.
Well, they did that once in a
Yeah.
while, but we were quite fortunate with the Mustang. Not
Yeah.
too many because our only holes we get was small arms. There was no
Yes,
flak
right.
because they were too low.
Yeah.
So after the tour with the Mustangs, I was posted to the Typhoon Squadron,
Yeah.
which was it was a 168 Squadron. It was a mixture of Canadians, British, Free French, and they had recently formed a mobile airfield. Later they became called wings, but we called them airfields. That's what we were known as. Well, I was 129 Airfield,
Yeah.
and this squadron of Typhoons was there with me, or with us.
But you had this conglomeration of planes there and people there. The different
This was
nations.
to a different airplane, different airport.
Different airport.
Different airport
okay.
altogether, you see.
Ah, yeah.
From this
From-
one we went to first was
Yeah.
Dunsfold, down in Dunsfold,
All right. Okay.
England. And then the next one we went to was West Hampnet, which was
Yeah.
on the other coast.
Yeah.
But I had a short course on the Hurricane, which is this one here.
Yeah.
I just started flying
That's this one.
handling the rockets.
That one there.
We were. That's the Hurricane, but we
Yeah.
had rockets on those, and they were experimenting with rockets.
Ah, yeah.
But the British Hurricane was made of fabric from the cockpit back.
Back. Oh.
And the cordite from the rockets would burn holes through the the
my
plastic.
Gosh. From
So,
here back,
but the Canadian Hurricanes were
Yeah.
all metal. They were made here in
Yes,
Canada,
yeah.
but we didn't have any of those. So anyway, I had a short course on how to hook up rockets and that,
Yeah.
and not knowing that I was going to be on a Typhoon Squadron
Sure.
at that time. Anyway, I went to Typhoon Squadron. It's a massive airplane. It's a 24-cylinder Napier Sabre engine,
Ooh.
ample power,
Yeah.
and a very
That's it there?
that's the Typhoon there
This is
with the rockets on.
Gee whiz. Oh, yeah. I'll hold it up that way, so. Hello? Hold it up this way so we can see it. There.
And
See?
we painted those black
looks
and
like
white
that
stripes
side.
on just prior to Normandy. before
Did
the
you?
invasion.
Oh.
We didn't know why we were painting them on. They just said paint them. They give us a
Why
pale
did
of-
they do that now?
That's to identify the airplane. Any airplanes that didn't have that on during the invasion were shot down, regardless.
down.
Because the
Oh.
Germans had some of our airplanes too, you see.
Oh,
They didn't
yes,
know
of
about this
course
black
they
and white
did.
thing.
So we painted black and white stripes on all our.
All our airplanes, even
Gee.
even the gliders were painted black and white.
Were they?
Yeah, everything was
What
painted.
a great
They'd bring us
idea.
this pail of paint and said,
Yeah.
and a big brush and said, "Here, want that airplane painted." Right
Paint
away.
it, yeah.
We didn't have any masking tape, not fancy like that. It was just 3 stripes around it and the black, and it was
Yeah.
I call it black whitewash, but it was
Yes.
black paint. But it washed off in time, like
Yes,
you know.
yeah.
And,
What a great, so you shot everything down that didn't
everything
have that
didn't
on.
have that black and white on
Yeah.
was because they had some of our airplanes that they'd captured.
Surely,
uh,
so they'd reuse.
prior
yeah,
to the
exactly.
well, like
Yeah.
prior to Dieppe and that.
Yes, surely.
And so they
Yeah.
just said, well, this is one way to fool them or try to fool them.
Yeah. Oh,
But
that's
some of the
good sense,
Americans even shot down our own airplanes with the black
Did
and
they?
white
With the
stripes.
black
Oh
and-
yeah,
oh, yes,
They
yeah.
were. I would say
Yeah.
they were a little trigger happy. The
Yes,
Americans were.
yes.
Anyway, that's another story. But we shortly after we got these painted was just
Yeah.
a short time later. Then the D-Day was the 6th of June was D-Day.
It was D-Day,
We
right.
proceeded to go to Normandy. We didn't know where we were going to go,
Yeah.
but they said line up. We
Yeah.
had 110 vehicles in our mobile unit. We had a mobile hospital, a photo unit, and a dental clinic.
Yeah.
110 vehicles, and you had, besides being a mechanic on the airplane, you had to work on or had to be a truck driver too.
Truck as well.
As
I
well,
suppose,
yeah. So,
and keep it going.
So I did both. So everybody didn't drive a truck, but I did. And on the wrong side of the road in England, of course, that's a little different too to get used to. So we went over to France, and we weren't the first squadron on
What
Normandy.
beach did you land on?
We landed at Juno Beach.
Juno, yeah, that was Canadian
And
beach,
we landed, I should say, on a landing barge, and had to drive right off into the water.
Water. Oh,
And that was quite an experience. But
Yeah.
I had previously had a course on driving vehicles underwater.
oh.
And of
Really?
course, a lot of people never heard about this.
Never heard about that. I didn't.
But anyway, I had a course in Blackpool, England.
Yeah.
They sent me up there, and of course, not knowing when D-Day was going to be,
Yeah.
even if there ever was going to be a D-Day. So anyway, I went to Blackpool, and they gave me this truck and said, okay, here's what you do. How do you waterproof it and
Yeah.
all that stuff. And they opened the gate to the old swimming pool. It was a peacetime
Yes, yeah.
place, and they drove. She said, okay, you drive into the swimming pool, down the ramp,
Yeah.
do a circuit, and back out again. If you stall, you got to swim ashore.
Oh.
And I'm not much of a swimmer at the best of times,
Yes,
with the
right.
full clothes on.
Yeah.
And so I down the ramp, and the water was just up to my armpits, and it leveled off.
Yeah.
And the truck was still going fine
Was it?
underwater. Well, everything underwater except the intake and
Yeah.
the breather, like, you know.
Yeah. But you'd what they call
You have to do
waterproof
that yourself.
You had to do that yourself.
And just multi-pounds of plasticine that the kids use
Yes,
to cover
yeah.
the
To
ignition
cover the
systems and
ignition,
everything
yeah,
else,
yeah.
and plug all the holes and
Oh, yeah.
vents. We didn't worry about the brakes or anything else, because as soon as you play the brakes a few times, it'll work.
They worked, yeah.
So anyway, I got this course done, and I came back to the unit and told them what I had done. Well, I said, well, we hope you never have to use it. So anyway, when we got on the landing barge on the other side of the continent,
Yeah.
it was probably around the second week of June,
Yeah.
and the Normandy was, we just established a beachhead then.
Yes, yeah.
So they told us where to go, and I drove off this truck on the ramp. But the first ones to go off the landing barge were the tanks, and they had the big flotation gears around. You may have seen them or heard
Oh,
about.
yes, I
The big,
did, yeah.
Like inner tubes around them to hold the tank up.
Yeah.
But it was quite rough that day, and they didn't really leave enough freeboard, and a lot of the tank swamped because they only had just a few inches freeboard. It
Yeah.
would be fine in still water.
Yeah,
But
right.
there was quite a swell that day.
Oh.
Anyway, we sunk quite a few tanks,
Yeah.
and then the tide was going out at the same. It's
Yeah.
all geared that way. Tide was going out, and the ramp was down, and the two propellers on the back of the ship kept pushing it forward as
Forward, so
as
it
the
would
weight
hold
got
it
off
on,
it,
yeah.
and it kept going up.
Yeah.
So and then the bigger trucks went next, and then the smaller trucks. So I was driving a 3/4 ton at the time, and I went off in about 3 feet of water, which was quite a relief to me because I didn't want to get soaking wet again.
No, sure.
So I drove off in 3 feet of
Yeah.
water, and then drove. Our convoy was
Yeah.
all set up on the shore. The military police there to direct us to They directed us to our airport. We got up to the airport, and all it was an old cabbage field. And
They'd mowed it.
they'd mowed, just take a grader and leveled all the cabbages off.
yes,
And
yeah.
they laid down coconut matting.
Yeah.
On top of that, wire mesh. And as a matter of fact, I was hoping you'd come out home. I'd show you. I brought a piece of this wire mesh home with me.
No, did
I
you?
brought it home with me when I was over there the second time.
Yeah.
I brought this wire mesh home to show my children,
Sure,
what this
yeah.
was the kind of runway. But
Yeah.
the dust was unbelievable, on
that
Normandy
thing
at that
like
time.
Yeah.
So we couldn't operate our airplanes for a few days there because we were too close to the front line. We were
yeah.
between the artillery and the infantry.
Oh, wow.
So that's where we had to dig in. Our slit trench dug in.
Surely, because the
And,
stuff was going over you.
Well, the Rodney, the big HMS Rodney, was
Yeah.
shooting over our heads into the Con,
wow.
which was only 17 miles
Miles
away.
away,
They'd
yeah.
go 20 some odd miles.
I know exactly where you were.
Yeah. Anyway, the Rodney was shooting over our head, and of course you could hear these shells. You could see the gun fire out in the harbor,
Yeah.
and with the and the flash,
Yeah.
and then the smoke, and then you could hear the whistling. Then you look this way, and you could see the shell going away from you, but you can't see it coming.
Coming,
But you
no,
could,
you
a
see
14-inch
it-
shell is a big. You could
Yeah,
see it going
yeah,
away
going
from
away
you,
from you, yeah.
and going into Con, and it would.
Yes, yeah, boom,
they were blowing
explode.
Con to pieces
Yeah.
because it was the SS had quite an established fortress in
Fortress
Con.
there, yes.
So after a few days, we got our airplanes on our airport, and
Yeah.
and as I said, the dust was terrible. Sometimes we get 6 hours out of one of those 24-cylinder engines. That's all we get. There was so much sand and dust on it.
Yeah, on it, yeah.
So a gentleman came from
But
England.
this landing thing worked, didn't it?
Beg
So
pardon?
that mesh field worked. It was a good landing field.
Well, it was good because it was better than
Than,
just a plowed field.
yes,
It
sure.
stopped you from sinking in.
Yeah.
So they sprayed oil and water on there to keep the dust on, or try
Yeah.
to keep the dust on. Anyway, this fellow came and told us, and we told him about having trouble with our engines seizing up all the time. You could turn the propeller and you could just hear it screaming for oil, just and the pilots were still flying as long as you could get the engine running.
Yeah.
And so anyway, after a while, this guy came from England, and he devised a filter for him. And by gosh, it saved our engines.
Really?
And
Isn't it?
his name was Folks.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a little story about him too.
Yeah.
Anyway, we operated off of there, and this was during the Falaise Gap. You may be
Yeah.
familiar
I'm
with the
very
Falaise Gap.
familiar, yes.
Our boys were very active
Yeah.
on that occasion, and before they pushed the Nazis back, the front line back.
Yeah.
Our boys were being shot at when they took off in their Typhoons. They had the bank as soon as they got airborne. I got a picture here of one taken off in someplace,
Yeah.
and it shows the dust. There's the Typhoon there taken
yes.
off,
Oh,
and the
my
dust
gosh.
behind it.
Yes, we can look at this afterward. Right?
And-
Yes, we can put it up afterward. Can you see it?
Probably with a glass you won't be able to see
Yeah,
it.
no, yeah, okay.
Anyway,
Thank you.
as soon as they got airborne, you can see he's got his wheels up halfway up, and he's
Yes,
just
yes, I
off the
do.
ground. He would have to bank real steep so the
Yeah.
Germans couldn't shoot at him with small arms when he took off,
for
because we were that
heaven's
close to
sake,
the front
you were
line.
that close
So
to
they would haul around and then come back and then get airborne and get up and
Yeah.
do their attack after.
You didn't
So-
get a lot of sleep at night, did you, Thought?
Those days I was only 20
course,
years
so
old,
you didn't
21
need
years old,
much, yeah.
so I didn't worry about sleep.
No,
I slept when
yeah.
I could.
Yeah.
And so I seemed I got enough, I'm still here.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was the story on our Typhoons.
Yeah.
But this one day, my pilot was Flight Lieutenant Plamondon. I remember him very well from Montreal. He took off this one day with a full load of rockets on, 4 20-millimeter cannons all loaded and everything. And got him. Just as he got airborne and was pulling around, 2 German airplanes flew over our airport at about 2,000 feet.
Yeah.
He saw them. He saw one of them. Now, he may saw both of them, I don't know.
Yeah.
But he saw one of them. He let all his rockets go at once and pretty much stalled the airplane because you're only supposed to let 2 go at a time.
Right, yeah.
But with so much back pressure there,
Yeah.
he pretty much stalled the airplane. He come back and told me later. Now, we watched this whole operation.
Yeah.
See, not very many people have seen one of your airplanes shoot down another enemy airplane over your own airport.
No.
So anyway, we watched this guy. You know, we see him let all his rockets go, just 8 streams of smoke come out, and he took off after him.
Yeah.
He chased him, and it was a Messerschmitt 109.
Yeah.
He shot him down just over the airport, just off the edge of the airport,
Yeah.
and the pilot bailed out, but his chute didn't open. You could see him falling end over end, coming down. Whether he was dead at the time or not, we will never know.
No, yeah.
And I've got a picture of the airplane burning about a mile past our airport when it went down in its Messerschmitt. So as soon as he come back, well, he was smiles all over. He said, "Get out the black paint, Frank, and put the X on her," because, you know, we put a black cross on there to indicate
When you
that they
shoot
shot
one
down
down,
something.
yeah.
And that was flight lieutenant. He became a squadron leader shortly after
Oh,
that.
Neat
But-
story.
And that was one of
Yeah.
the. I can visualize that right today.
Yes,
You know, that
that's
airplane
good,
being
yeah.
shot down, and you know, it's a terrible thing to say. But the German life didn't mean a damn thing to
Thing
us.
to us, no,
It was him or us. You know,
Sure it was, yeah.
He could have come back and strafed us, whatever. But
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
I
So
feel
in
I
those
feel
days it
remorse
meant
about
nothing.
that. Having
Yeah.
to shoot people.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
We were brainwashed. Let's
Yeah,
face
of
it.
course. Of course
They
we
were
all
our
were.
enemy in period, and that was it.
We all were.
And it was just damn.
Yeah.
To me, it's a damn shame. War is
But
terrible.
yes, but in your case, there,
Yeah.
in the situation you were in, it was them or you.
Oh yeah, it was. It was
So
yeah,
you know, we
yeah,
all.
that's the way. That's
Yeah.
the way it went. Anyway.
Yeah.
So after the Falaise Gap episode was over, our airfield was disbanded,
Oh.
not knowing that we were sent over there as a backup in case the whole airport got washed out.
Washed out.
You know, or you know, obliterated. So they folded up our airplane, our 129 airfield, and our squadron went to 121 airfield, which was another wing. That makes 3 squadrons on their wing. We only had
Yeah.
1 squadron on our wing. Most of them had 2 or 3.
3. Oh yeah.
So anyway, our squadron went there, and now I was off of Typhoons then. So my next posting was back to number 430 Squadron, which we're now flying the Mark 14 Spitfire, which is, I haven't got one here, but it's a 5-bladed prop. That's a
yeah.
Mark 9, Mark 5.
But now, where was this situated?
This
In
was
what part of the
situated
world?
just on the Belgian-French border.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, see, the Falaise Gap was over there.
It was
so
over
that's where
there,
we
yeah.
went. The name of the place was Bayeux, where we went. So I went there, and of course, I had never had any experience on the Mark 14 Spitfire, or never Spitfire at all.
Yeah.
So anyway, those days, you had to
Very
get
fast, too,
You
yeah.
had to learn fast,
Yeah.
and there was nobody there to say, this is what you do, this is what you do.
You just looked.
You just common sense sort of thing.
Yeah.
And of course, the air crew were very helpful, and
Yeah,
some of the old timers were helpful. Anyway, I worked on the Mark 14 Spitfire,
Yeah.
my Spitfire,
Yeah, your Spitfire.
and I stayed with them until the Mark 430 Squadron, until the end of the war. We wound up in Germany,
Yeah.
the furthest airfield inside of Germany at the end of the Second World War.
you really?
We were up near the Baltic Sea,
Yeah. Oh.
and
Now, and you still had Spitfires.
I still on the Mark 14 Spitfire.
Yeah.
Oh, they were a fabulous airplane.
Oh, they were.
The old ones, of course, didn't have the power that this one
Yeah,
had. This one
yeah.
had terrific power.
Yeah. They were good for anything the German could put against
Oh yeah,
them,
yeah,
weren't
yeah.
they?
Except that the Germans had got the jet into. We never really got into combat with the jet.
The final
They-
Messerschmitt had
yeah,
a jet in it,
yeah.
yes.
But
yeah.
we had the Gloucester Meteor, but it really never got into action. I say that the British had the Gloucester Meteor with
Yes,
2 engine
sure,
fighters. But no, the Spitfire would make anybody else sit up and take notice. In the
Now,
hands of the right purpose.
You were there with that squad until the end of the war.
Yes, I was. Yeah. Yeah.
And were you in the same place? Where were you when the war ended?
Up near the Baltic Sea in
Where are you?
Lubeck, Lunenburg, Germany.
Lunenburg,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
Gee
where we
whiz.
were. Yeah.
And you heard that the war was over. Were you notified?
I got a
or-
picture. Churchill announcing the end of the war. It's in one of my magazines
Yeah.
here. I'm laying in the tent, and the rest of my boys, I can name some of them,
Yeah.
are sitting outside, listening to this battery-operated radio.
Radio,
It's sitting
yeah.
outside one of the magazines, so I can show
How
you later.
exciting, eh?
And they said, "Geez, the war is over.
Over,
God,
yeah.
where's the beer?" Of course, there was no beer over there
No,
then. Or beer was a very limited thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was.
Now, just out of curiosity, did you have planes in the air when you heard that? were you flying? Were the boys flying that day when you heard the end of the war?
I can't answer that question. I really can't.
good.
I was laying in the tent. May have been a day off. I really don't
Yes,
know.
yeah, right. Okay.
Anyway,
That was the big day.
it was a big day.
Yeah,
I imagine there was some airplanes in the air because
Yeah,
we seemed to every day we had airplanes. If the weather was fit, there was
Sure.
airplanes in the air.
Now, what happened then? They pulled you out of there, did they?
Oh no, we went on as the Army of Occupation.
Ooh, did you?
Yeah,
Oh, the Air
our
Force
squadron was posted as the Army of Occupation. It was only a figurehead thing in case uprisings came along the way.
Oh, I see.
And that's what we
Because it
assumed.
went through my mind. What are you fellows going to do?
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
it was just in
yeah.
case of,
Yeah, and something
and of course, at those days, I couldn't use this term, the Russians and the British were not on very friendly
Friendly
terms,
terms,
so we
yes,
didn't know
that's
what was going to happen.
good way to put
I
it.
didn't, I just did what I was told because I'm
yes,
just
but
an
that was the
LAC.
reason behind
But
it, I
that's-
guess.
Hindsight is what tells me
Yes,
that's
yeah,
the reason.
Yeah.
So we moved on further, as I said, further into Germany at the end of
Yeah.
the war, and with our Spitfires. And then after
Yeah.
they said, okay, time to repat.
Yeah.
But you can, if you don't want to repat, this is repatriation to Canada.
Yeah.
If you don't want to repat, you can volunteer to go to Japan,
Oh,
because the Japanese war was still on. you
Yeah.
see. I said, I've had enough of this
Oh.
damn foolishness. So,
Like to
so
hear
I
about
said,
that.
no, I'm going to wait.
Yeah.
So a lot of the guys volunteered to go to Japan. They
Yeah.
got home before I did, and they came over after I did, because the war ended when they got back to
Surely,
Canada. So that was kind of
Now,
a,
tell me this. What was life like, day to day? Your living conditions and so on.
well, our living conditions in the airfield
Yeah.
were quite rough.
Really?
We were under canvas all the time, winter and summer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We had to dig our own slit trenches
Yeah.
once we got to the continent, and
Yeah.
as a little article I got here,
Yeah.
after we got strafed pretty bad one day, the slit trenches went down another foot deeper. We,
But of course you'd be getting strafed all the time. You were a target all the time because they knew you were
either
there.
with the 88s to shoot at us. We've been shot at with 88s even. You know, we were that close to the German artillery,
Yeah.
and they're an accurate gun and a
Oh, the
very
rise.
if you
Tell
know
me
anything about
about
an
it.
88.
They were the
No,
most
they-
accurate gun in the war. I
Yeah,
think.
and they were deadly.
Yeah.
I got a close call with one time.
you?
Just when I got. Can I tell you this?
Oh yeah, sure.
I was de-waterproofing my truck,
Yeah.
and it was a little sunny day in June, so I put it up in this little knoll where the sun was shining down on me, and you had to take off all this plasticine, otherwise it would overheat, you see,
Yeah.
after running on
Yeah.
dry ground for a while.
Sure.
So I got this truck up on top of the little knoll there, and I'm busily taking off the waterproof of it, and there was shooting going on all
Yeah,
around, but
yeah.
I thought they were going the other way.
Yeah.
And then I heard this whistle and plop. I looked over, and there was a puff of dirt come up behind me.
Oh.
And so I goes over to see what the hell's going on, you know. So I looked down this little hole or
Hole it was
ditch
made,
or what it
yeah.
was. And gee, there's a shell laying in there, quite a long shell too, you know.
Yeah.
So I said to myself, gee, that's somebody's gun is not going very far. Is he shooting short or something? You know, I just kind of confused. So the Royal Air Force Regiment looked after security on our airport.
Yeah,
They did
yeah.
security and also bomb disposal
British
and,
Regiment.
and all that
Regiment, yeah.
type of thing. So this RAF fellow was over there, and I beckoned him over, because they were around all the time. I said, Jesus, I said, some damn shell just landed just back of my truck here.
Yeah.
He come over and looked. Jesus, he used quite strong language.
Yeah,
He said,
yeah.
he said, get that effing truck out of here. He said, that shell was meant for you. He said,
Oh,
the Germans could see that truck sitting on a knoll, and they shot at me with an 88.
Within 88.
But the shell didn't explode. It was an anti-personnel shell. It didn't explode. So he said, get that truck out of here. So
Yeah.
I didn't hesitate at all to get the truck out of
I
there.
bet you.
So he went and got his cotton, gun cotton,
Yes.
which they blew up.
Yeah.
And he laid the gun cotton on and blew up the shell there, and it blew up right there,
Yes, yeah.
right in the hole. But yeah, he said,
Isn't it lucky it didn't blow up when it fell?
oh yeah, if it blew it up when it's supposed to, well, I wouldn't be talking to you today.
No, right,
So
exactly.
anyway, that was fine and dandy. So, I said, oh, well. So he said, gee, I guess they, that shell had its name on, had your name on it.
Yeah.
I said, I guess they didn't spell it right. You know, that's the kind of attitude you had to have.
Great
You know?
line, yeah.
And I never thought any more about it.
Yeah.
But I thought a hell of a lot about it after.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay, Frank. Now, how old were you now, and what was your rank?
I was in LAC all during the Second War, leading aircraftsman all during the Second. Never got
all
promoted.
during the war. Oh.
You know the old story. There's no promotion this side of the ocean.
No,
so
sir,
God
there
bless them all. So that's the true story as far as I'm concerned.
You're right.
And
Yeah.
I was, I guess I'd be 21 then or
21
something.
then,
21 then.
What a great story. What a
And so anyway, that was my little Normandy expedition.
Yeah.
Close call, I call
Yeah,
it. Close
yeah,
call that
yeah,
I.
close
But I didn't think it was a close call then. I never
Oh,
bothered
you
me.
never
I didn't
thought
lose
about
any
it.
sleep about it. I lost more sleep after, and then
Yeah.
than I did then.
Okay,
So,
now how long did you stay being a leftover squadron after the war?
Well, the war ended in May
Yeah.
'45, and I come home in. I got back in Vancouver in September '45.
Oh, so you just went through the
Yeah.
summer. sort
Yeah,
of.
I had to go back to
Yeah.
England and then
Yes,
and
yeah.
then back to.
And
I
you
came
came
back
back
on
on
a
a
ship
ship?
too.
Did you?
Yeah, and I said, well, I came back on a was a prisoner of war ship. What they've been carrying
Oh.
Italian prisoners of war on. It wasn't our prisoners of war.
Yeah,
They'd
it
been
was-
carrying down from the Mediterranean area, and it was filthy, lousy,
it? Oh.
filthy. It wasn't like the Queen Elizabeth.
No, that it was.
And it took us quite a few days to go back. Of course, we didn't have to go escorted then.
Yeah.
And I said, well, it took us about 7 days to come back. So I said, gee whiz, I can't just poke around here. So I went and worked in the kitchen.
Oh.
I volunteered to go and work in the kitchen.
Oh, you have to
made
be
in the
working
bakery.
at something all
I was
the
in the
time.
bakery business. And I used to, I could go down any time. When I had a pass to go to the kitchen, I'd go down any time and have something to eat. And I always get
Oh,
fresh
yeah.
bread, because we
Yeah.
hadn't had bread over there in
Sure.
the continent.
Yeah.
See, most of the time on the continent, when we were traveling, we always had K rations, we had a mobile or a field kitchen with us, but it was...
You didn't have time to do much
well,
of that.
you
did
know,
you?
they just didn't have the time.
Sure,
And of
yeah.
course, when we first got there, a lot of guys had dysentery,
Yeah.
very, very bad, because there was a lot of dead bodies, cattle, horses,
Oh,
and
yes,
people around, and
yeah.
people had dysentery very bad at the first while,
Yeah.
and sent a lot of guys back to England that just couldn't hack it.
Really? Yeah.
So my buddy, a very good, close buddy of mine, he had to go back to England. And
Oh,
he broke down with jaundice and all
Yeah,
that, but he's,
yeah.
But anyway, we got through that okay.
Yeah. And now you come back to Canada. On
No,
this
I had
boat?
another little episode I got to tell you.
Did you?
The
Oh.
Germans, on the 1st of January 1945,
Yeah.
they thought they'd give us a little bit of a surprise, surprise.
Oh,
So
really?
so we were, I got to loosen my jacket. I'm getting
Yes,
kind of warm.
okay.
So we were, this New Year's morning, we were getting our airplanes ready to take off. The war was all over,
Yes, yeah.
right, on January the 1st.
Yeah.
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 No, it wasn't. I beg your pardon. I'm ahead of myself. The war wasn't over, but it was getting to the stage that it was.
Toward the end.
We
Everyone
could see
knew
the end of
was-
it.
Yeah.
We could see the end of it because the war didn't end till May.
Yeah.
So this one morning, I just got out of my Spitfire. I'd been running my Spitfire and got out of it and was going to go to the what we call the flight shack to sign
Yeah.
it out as being serviceable.
Yeah.
So I got about halfway to the flight shack, about 150 yards, and this flight shack was just a made up bunch of wood that we piled together. And
I see, yeah,
just
a makeshift thing,
It was
yeah,
a real
yeah.
makeshift because
Yeah.
the Germans said we were at Eindhoven Airport at the time. Eindhoven was completely obliterated.
Yeah.
The hangars, buildings, everything was completely by the Germans
Yeah.
and by our own bombing. So we made this little flight shack thing. We kept our L-14s. Our L-14s are our logbooks for airplanes in there. So I'm heading over to sign out this airplane of mine. And my airframe tech, my rigger I call him,
Yeah.
who incidentally lives in Toronto and I still in correspondence
Do
with
you?
him.
Yeah,
He hadn't finished his part of the inspection, so I was heading over to sign up mine. I looked up and gosh, these airplanes are all coming right down tree level.
Yeah.
I said, my God, I said, the Americans are going to give us a little show for New Year's morning with their Mustangs and Thunderbolts. That's what they look like to me.
Yeah.
Next damn thing I know, all the guns open up on all these line of airplanes, right straight across the airplane, right at low level. And so I hit the dirt, of course. That's automatically hit the dirt.
Yeah.
Lay down. There's nothing to crawl into, except your skin, and you
Yeah,
can't
right.
crawl out of that too well. So anyway, I flopped down. In my airplane, I just got out of about, I'd say a minute before, was the first one hit, and she just burst into flames. It was just a massive flame. I got a picture of it at home.
Gee
Burnt right in half. So anyway, after the first wave of airplanes
Yeah.
went over, I jumped up and run into the flight shack.
Yeah.
Of course, everybody then realized we were going to be attacked,
Yeah.
Well, we didn't know by how many damn airplanes.
Sure.
So I was in the flight shack with a bunch of the other guys, and I was laying on the floor, and right beside my head was a wooden beam, I guess, sort of like a post, I guess, holding
Yes,
part of
yeah.
the building up. So I'm laying down looking out the door, and I could see this damn Focke-Wulf coming across the airport, you know, with his guns sitting away, and the shells weren't penetrating the ground. The ground was frozen January the 1st,
Yeah.
and they were ricocheting up.
Ooh.
So I seen these coming across, and I thought, gee, I hope, you know, what can you do when they're coming right at you? Anyway, he stopped firing for some unknown reason, but the ricochet in the shells came down, hit the ground, and hit this pole
Post in the
right
air.
above my head, about 2 feet above my head. It just shattered
wow.
the room with
Yeah,
splinters of everything. It was a 20-millimeter cannon shell that hit this damn post and, of course, shattered it.
Yeah.
So the flight sergeant, our boss, he said, let's get the hell out of here in the slit train. So we all ran out of there and jumped in the slit trench, and the slit trench this time of year had ice in it. We had to break the
of
ice to get
course.
into the slit trench. Here we're standing in water up past our knees, frozen, you know, with ice.
Yeah.
So we had to wait till the shooting was all over.
Yeah.
It seemed like eternity, but it only lasted about 20 minutes. But
Yeah.
when you're being shot at for 20 minutes straight, it's a hell of a long time.
Long time.
So anyway, we after we got out of there, we found out that there was approximately 50 airplanes strafing us. 50
Gee
airplanes.
whiz.
And some of the people were just kids flying the airplanes. These fellas look old compared to some of the pilots that were flying.
Really?
There was one pilot was flying. See, they were inexperienced. This
Yes.
was the last, Luftwaffe's last ditch
Gasp,
stand.
sort of,
You know,
yes,
and we're going
yeah.
to destroy all the airports.
Yeah.
Ours took one of the worst beatings. We lost pretty near all our airplanes,
Oh.
strafed them all, and we lost 14 guys, killed and wounded. This one airplane was flying so low that he run into one of our airplanes sitting on the ground.
Oh.
That's how low he was flying. And he
Gee,
broke the wing off it,
Yeah.
and of course he crashed
He
and went
crashed
rolling down the
himself,
runway.
yeah.
So we went over there.
Yeah.
After the strafing had stopped, we went over there, and here he was. He was still in the cockpit of the airplane. It broke in 3 pieces, the
Yeah.
engine, cockpit, and the fuselage, and they all
Yeah.
rolled different ways.
Yeah.
And it was a Messerschmitt 109, and the pilot was still in the cockpit. And I can just see his face right today. He looked like a kid about 16 years old.
Gee whiz.
Had no experience whatsoever
Ever,
at flying,
no.
you know, and he was just, you know, he was going to get down and get it. He got the airplane all right, but he got himself too.
Sure,
But
yeah.
he, before we got him out of there, he died right in the cockpit of
right
the
in the
airplane.
cockpit,
But, so you said, there goes another goddamn kraut. You know, that's the terminology we had,
I
which is
know.
terrible to think
I
of
know,
that
but
way.
still,
But that's
yeah,
the
but
way,
you-
that's
you-
how the feeling.
You had quite a perfect right to be pretty angry being straight like
My
that.
poor corporal, I kept in contact with him until he passed away a couple of years ago. As a matter of fact, him and I went back to Holland and Germany for the
on a-
50th anniversary.
Did you?
Yeah,
Oh, that's
and
great.
he went back, and then he died a year after he got back. He was shot there. As I said,
Yeah.
the shells were hitting the ground and ricocheting up, and he flopped down, and a shell went right up his backside,
Oh.
and it didn't touch any bones, but it laid him wide open, right up his spine, and just
Good.
just like somebody hit him with a broad axe.
Yeah.
This shell had just opened him right up there.
Oh,
So of course he wound up in hospital, and of course I never seen him again. You know, everybody once
yeah.
they've gone back to England, we don't see them. But that's what happened to Cookie.
All right, Frank, we left back in time there for a minute, but now I'd like to go forward to you're coming back to England after really it's all over. Now they bring the squadron back there, do they? Back to England before you go home.
No,
No?
it didn't work that way. We, as I said, we wound up up near Lüneburg
Yes.
in Germany. The airplanes all flown back to England. We
Yes.
were still there with no airplanes
Oh my goodness.
for a short time.
Yes.
So we started hobby shops and all things like this, and
Yeah.
we even started our own magazine and also a newspaper, which I brought with me today. I lugged those things around ever since the Second
Okay,
World
yes.
War.
We'll put them on this
And
tape
so
afterward.
So I lugged those around, and we stayed there, and we did, we did a bit of looting and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
that, of course.
Things were free for picking up if you
Yes.
went into a German camp that was been disbanded after the war. I
Yes,
mean,
of
you
course,
just
yeah.
you help yourself to whatever was there.
Yeah.
It was the natural thing to do, of course. They
Sure.
did the same thing to us.
Yeah.
But I wanted to get back to one little story
Yeah.
that we missed. After we left Eindhoven in Holland, which was our base for the winter,
Yeah.
we went on up further to just outside of Bergen-Belsen, where the Belsen prisoner of war camp. And I have stories and pictures from Bergen-Belsen. A very good friend of mine took these pictures,
Yes.
and I have them with me. And they can say, some people can say the Holocaust didn't happen. I'll say they're full of you-know-what.
Yeah, really.
Because I've been to 4 prisoner of war camps
Yeah.
after the war, and I was in Bergen-Belsen
Yeah.
when it was liberated.
Yeah.
I drove my truck right through the village of Bergen-Belsen,
Yeah.
and these poor devils, we
Yeah.
tried to throw things out to them, cigarettes and chocolate bars and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And if you throw a chocolate bar out on the street,
Yeah.
they couldn't reach down for it. They just fell on it. They were that weak. And
yeah.
these people, when Bergen-Belsen was liberated,
Yeah.
they just were out on the street, you know, and it was
Yeah.
really pitiful.
That was the Holocaust, really, in bold relief.
Yeah.
That
Oh,
was,
yeah. So they, as I said, we weren't allowed to stop. You know,
No,
we just said, and they told us not to throw anything because they knew this would happen. They could fall right in front of your truck. You'd run over them because we weren't allowed to
Yeah.
stop.
Yeah.
You know, 110 vehicles in the convoy, and you're traveling bumper to bumper, pretty near.
Surely. Sure.
And but this reminded me. I said, God, anybody tells me this Holocaust didn't
Yeah,
happen, I said,
yeah.
there's where. I was right there when they were liberated, like, you know,
Yeah,
just a
sure.
couple of days there. And the British just opened the gates and let all the people out, and there was thousands of them there.
Yeah.
After the war, I did go back to Germany, and I visited that camp again.
Did you?
And I brought some souvenirs back from that camp. I have them at home now. And I also visited two other camps, one at Lysrudolf, which is outside of Strasbourg, France,
Yes.
and Dachau. I
Went to Dachau.
I went to
That's
Dachau
outside, that's outside the German city. What's it called? It doesn't matter.
I
do-
can't remember the name of the
Yeah,
town, but it was
yeah.
I went down on a bus tour.
Yes,
And
yes.
as a matter of fact,
Munich.
It's
near
outside, not far from
yeah,
Munich.
yeah.
Yeah, anyway, we had a tour of that, and I'm a devil for looking for things, you know.
Right.
So I said, I've got to get something from Dachau that nobody else has got.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm going to get a brick out of one of those ovens. There were 13 ovens, you know, all in a row where they
Yeah.
put the bodies in to cremate them.
Yeah.
I said, I'm going to get a brick out of one of those ovens. So I had somebody posted at the door to make sure that nobody was watching, and I crawled inside of one of those ovens, and I took out a brick. That brick now is in the museum in Ottawa, in the Holocaust Museum. I
Isn't
sent it to
that
them, and it's got the
terrific?
number on it, and
Yeah.
a number on it, and they're going to try to trace where it was manufactured and the year and
And
everything else. And they
oh,
keep me in
yeah.
correspondence with that.
Yes. Oh, isn't
So I
that
sent the brick to them, and they were so pleased to get this brick.
What a great story.
But anyway, I had to.
Yeah, that's a wonderful story.
I just had to do that. I
Yeah,
don't know why.
yeah.
And I got things at home there that I picked up different places. At
Yeah.
Belsen, at Bergen-Belsen, I picked up a piece of the tile from one of the washrooms, like, you know.
Oh, yeah,
Just a chunk
yeah.
of that was all. See, the British, when they liberated, they bulldozed everything down.
Down, oh, yeah.
See, one of the pictures I got here as an open grave, and I couldn't begin to count the number of bodies that are in there,
Yeah.
but they was liberated, and those bodies were still there, and they just would sprinkle lime on them, and then another layer of dirt, another lime, and
Yes,
another layer
yes,
of dirt.
yeah.
And this picture here, this buddy of mine took, shows the body just laying in there.
Yeah.
And then it shows some of the German guards loading the corpses onto trucks to give them a half-decent burial.
Gee,
And then the British
Yeah.
bulldozed the place right down. But they reconstructed the main area with lots of
Yeah.
pictures now. Nobody's probably been there. Have you never been there to
No,
Bergen-Belsen
no.
since there? It's worth seeing.
Yeah.
It's very morbid. The whole
Yeah,
thing is morbid.
story,
But
yeah, yeah, but
it's
still.
people
it's
that say it
worth
didn't
seeing.
happen,
Yeah.
damn well should go there
Should
and
go
see
there,
it.
of course.
Anyway, I was three of them, and I know what it's all about.
Yeah.
I know it from my viewpoint. I could
Yeah.
walk away. They couldn't.
Yeah, surely.
So that's
Yeah.
the story. Okay, let's go
Okay, now we're going to take you back to England.
Okay.
Okay. now
back
you
to England. I went,
Went. Taking your souvenirs with you.
taking my
Yeah, yeah.
goodies with me.
Yes, good.
So
And then they brought you home fairly soon, did they?
I came home by ship, as I said.
Yes, yes. And
Can't think of the name of the boat right now.
where'd you
but
land?
it was a-
Halifax, I suppose?
Landed in Halifax.
Yes.
And then by train across Canada
to
to Vancouver.
did you?
Go right straight to Vancouver,
Yeah.
and I picked up all my loot in a kit
Yeah.
bag in Vancouver.
Yes.
Or actually New Westminster,
Yeah.
where I was living at the time.
Yeah.
And my mother and father met me there, and
Yeah.
all brothers and sisters, and that. Not my brother, because my brother was a prisoner of war during the war. He was a
Yeah.
mid-upper gunner on a Halifax and was shot down. He got shot in the airplane, got shot coming down the parachute. So he was pretty well handicapped.
Yeah.
Not shot at personally, but flak.
Flak. Oh, yes.
And
yeah.
shot through the groin.
Yeah.
And the Germans operated on. He spent 10 months in the hospital in Germany. And
Germany?
In
Oh,
Germany, in a
yeah.
German hospital.
Yeah.
And this is getting off at the story altogether, but this is about my brother.
Yeah.
He was part of the war as far as I
Well,
was
of course he
concerned.
was.
And anyway, they couldn't take out the shrapnel from the front, so they took it out from the back, and they took out the lower two vertebrae off his coccyx to take the shrapnel out. It was right up against his coccyx.
Wow.
And they operated on him.
Yeah.
And he, as I said, spent 10 months there, and then and the rest of a year and a half in a prisoner of war camp, Stalag 4B as he was in.
Yeah.
And I got a picture of that here, too.
Good.
And so, anyway, quite a while after the war, this old nurse, she was an old nurse to him at that time, because we were all young, you know.
Young kids.
And he said she was an old lady then.
Yeah.
He went back to visit her after the war. She was 80 years old. He went, and she remembered him. She used to slip him the odd shot of morphine because of his pain, because the morphine was only for the German soldiers, you see,
of course,
they were in the
yes,
German
yeah.
hospital. And she used to slip him the odd shot of morphine. He went back, and she couldn't speak English, but she knew him right away.
Did she?
And
Isn't
so they
that
had quite a conflict, but since then she's passed on.
Yeah.
My brother now is in a veterans hospital. He worked quite a while outside. He was the second cook in Ocala Prison in British Columbia, if you know what Ocala Prison
yes,
is. He was
yeah.
the second cook in there for quite a few years, and then he retired, and then his back's got the best of him now. So he's in a veterans hospital in Vancouver, in Burnaby, BC.
Oh, yeah.
So that's where brother is. Anyway, that's his story.
Okay. So now you were back home.
I'm back home, yeah.
And so you've
We
got
have-
your life now ahead of you.
I got,
But you love engines.
well, shortly after I got home, I got married.
Yeah.
Uh,
Did you?
Yeah, oh yeah. I
You
got
better get to that.
married to a girl from North Vancouver,
Yeah.
which I had known before the war. We kept in correspondence all the war. She sent me numerous packages over there, Red
Yeah.
Cross parcels over there,
Oh, yeah.
and cigarettes. I was a chain smoker in those days.
Right, yeah.
Oh, I was a terrible smoker. We used to get 300 cigarettes for $1. It's pretty good to hear that today.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
she sent me all kinds of parcels and
So
packages.
she was
I
a
enjoyed it.
childhood sweetheart in the true sense of the word.
Yeah, well, yeah. And so after I came back, got married. Shortly after I got married, I got married, and I got out of the Air Force.
Did you?
I got out of the Air Force. I felt, I'm married. I should stick around home. You know,
Yes, yeah.
you know how a young fellow gets married. You got to stay close to home all the
Yeah.
time. So anyway, I worked at 5 different jobs when and I couldn't get contented at all.
No.
I just couldn't find they were all different type of jobs.
Yeah.
Construction. I was being taught blasting, dynamite blasting.
Yes, but that was no good for you.
Rock, no, and it wasn't good for me. Airplanes were in my mind the whole damn time. So anyway, I said to the wife one time, I said, I'm going to go down and join the Air Force again. She said, well, if you feel you'll be happier, do it.
Do it.
So I went back and joined the Air Force at RCF Station Sea Island, which is now International Airport of Vancouver.
Yeah.
And I stayed there for 5 years. This is where I became qualified as a flight engineer on the Canso aircraft, which is
Yes,
this
I
one
know.
here.
That's that big
The old
fella.
flying boat.
Yes,
I've flown in
yeah.
this particular
Yeah.
airplane many hours.
Have you? Oh,
and I
yeah.
got over 1,000 hours altogether on different Cansos.
Oh, isn't it?
And also I was instructing on the boat school there as a flight engineer, not
Yeah.
as a pilot, but a flight engineer. They always, so you carried 3 crew on there. If you were close to home, you carried
Yeah.
3. If you went away, you carried a radio officer and a navigator. But around home, we only carried 2 pilots and a flight engineer. So anyway, I flew there on the Cansos for
Yeah.
5 years, up and down off the over Esquimalt.
Coast, yes,
You know, that's
yeah.
where all the refugees are now.
Yeah.
That's where we did our landing and takeoffs and water, because
Yeah.
we're landing on land is no problem, but landing on water was
Yeah.
a little different. And then we got the Lancasters there, or wartime Lancasters with this
Yeah,
type here.
This, yeah. This fella here.
And
We see that? There.
we got the 2 Lancasters there for search and rescue,
Yeah.
but we had no pilots could fly them.
Oh.
Nobody could fly them.
Oh, isn't that strange?
They brought them in and said, there's your airplanes.
Yeah. And then
So there was a sergeant with us, Johnny Kolesnik was his name. He was a flight lieutenant during the Second World War and a Lancaster pilot. But
Yeah.
after the war was over, they reverted everybody back to their original trade.
Oh, I
So
see.
Johnny said, I can fly that damn thing.
Yeah.
So he told the CO, he said, I can fly on them. He said, I did a tour of ops on them.
Yeah.
He said, well, we'll get we'll have to get you to check us out.
Yeah.
But had to go to Ottawa to get permission for him
to fly it.
to fly the airplane again, and he'd been qualified, on land.
Yeah.
So anyway, they gave him his permission to fly these airplanes to check out both COs of the squadron,
Yeah.
Flight Lieutenant Harling and Flight Lieutenant Hoseason, both Hoseas, which I
Yeah,
flown
yeah.
both of them anyway.
Okay.
So he checked them out, and after they checked them out, they grounded them again. He couldn't fly again. And then the COs checked out the rest of the crew on
Oh,
it.
yeah.
So I got checked out as a flight engineer on Lank later on in
yeah.
time. I didn't fly that much in a Lank,
Yeah.
but I know all about them.
Sure.
Or I'd say
Yeah,
all about
yeah.
them. I knew enough about them to
Yeah.
what throttles to push and what fuel to select. You know,
Now, you're still on the West Coast.
on the West Coast still
Yeah,
flying.
okay.
5 years I spent on the West Coast flying, and also besides, when we flew up there, not like the engineers today, they bring the airplane back and say, fix it. We had to fix the damn thing ourselves when we brought it back.
Oh,
Into the hangar.
you didn't have an engineer.
We had
were
to
the
do. We had a mechanic. You were flying as a flight engineer, and you had to be a mechanic when you brought it back. So we had to fix the damn airplanes too.
Yeah.
So a lot of times we fixed them, you know,
Yeah.
away from base. You know, for a
Yeah,
step overnight,
sure.
we'd had a little job, we'd fix it
Sure.
the best we could.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was my flying experience on the West Coast, and
Yeah.
I was involved with.
Then you came east, did you?
Yeah, I came to Camp Borden. But before that, I was involved with the, you remember the B-29, B-36 that crashed on the West Coast with an atomic bomb on?
I do, yeah.
I was on the search for that one.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we never found the airplane.
Yeah.
We seen what the guys that bailed out. They still feel that they dropped the bomb into the ocean. But the guys that bailed out, they found the airplane years and years later.
Yeah.
But I was on the
And
search
there was
for
no
that.
bomb on it.
Well, they don't really know. The Americans never divulged. They figure they may have gone out the ocean and dropped the bomb before they let the airplane in, took the airplane. See, they bailed out the airplane and let the airplane go.
Yes,
It ran
right.
into the mountains.
Oh, my God.
So
Yeah.
that was a B-36. So
Yeah.
I got the little story on that one, too. But, I keep those stories.
Yeah.
And when I was a flight engineer in the Lancaster, we were searching up near the Paw, Manitoba for an American Expediter small aircraft, twin-engine aircraft that crashed up there. And these were attaches, you know, big shots that were flying in this airplane coming from the Paw, Manitoba.
Yeah.
They were building a mid-Canada radar line at the time. So this airplane disappeared, so we went up to search for it. And our airplane found these guys on a bog, waving their arms and everything else. They'd been down about 6 or 7 days, nothing to eat or anything else.
Gee.
And they landed the airplane okay, but they were pretty hungry and fly-bitten. The mosquitoes and black flies in that part of the country are desperately.
Oh, yeah.
And so anyway, we radioed back because we couldn't land our airplane there.
Yeah.
We radioed back. In those days, we never had helicopters, you know, just before we had helicopters. So anyway, they went in by road the best they could and brought them out. And I got pictures of that little
That
episode, too.
Now,
They were very grateful of
in
us.
the meantime, has your family arrived yet?
Oh, yeah, every year I had a child.
That's
Yeah, my first
I
boy
thought
born
that
in
might be
19,
going.
married in 45, first boy born in 1956.
Yeah,
46.
46, yeah.
And every year after that, for 4 years, they kept coming. I didn't know what was causing it. Anyway,
Kind of a virus.
anyway, my children are all well and able. I have one boy in Alberta, and the other 3 children are here in Nova Scotia.
Oh, are they?
My
Yeah.
daughter lives in Nicktaw. My son is the deputy mayor of Kentville.
Oh, my goodness.
And my young fella, he's a motorcycle specialist here in the valley.
Yeah.
He has over 60 or 70 motorcycles of various states of repair, and he sells. He's president of the Antique Motorcycle Club.
Oh, isn't that?
And he has a 1945 Harley Davidson that runs, and I've ridden it. An old wartime bike, and he runs.
Oh,
So he's got lots of junk down here at Wilmot, and he was up visiting
Now,
me
listen,
this
I'm
morning.
so anxious, Frank, to get you being a Nova Scotian. How long is that
Okay.
going to take us?
I came from RCF Station Sea Island
Yeah.
to Camp Borden.
Yeah.
I was posted to Camp Borden as an instructor.
Oh, yeah.
And I instructed for a short while, and then I became an examiner. I examined all the technicians that processed through Camp Borden
Okay.
on aero engine, the aero engine aspect of their trade.
Yeah.
So I made up exams and examined. I used to go to different bases, and they would come to our base,
Yeah.
and I got qualified on 28 different airplanes in my tour.
28?
28 different airplanes that I was qualified on
Goodness
to work on and to sign out.
Yeah.
So that was my job at Camp Borden, examiner. I was there for 7 years.
Gee.
But I had a very unfortunate accident when to Camp
Yeah.
Borden. I was involved in a car accident. I spent a
Oh,
year and
right.
8 months in a hospital.
Oh,
I
my.
never got on my feet for a year and 8 months.
And
I
a
fu-
car accident.
I had to fuse my spine.
Oh, my goodness.
And I was in a body cast from my knees to my shoulders for
Goodness
near a year, and then about 8 months to recover.
Yeah.
But I'm fine
Isn't
now. It
that-
was a fantastic operation. I spent that year and 8 months in Sunnybrook Hospital in Toronto.
In Toronto, yes.
But I got to tell
Bayview
you a
Avenue,
little
yeah.
side story on that. I got lots of side stories. When I
You
was in
sure do.
hospital, this flight lieutenant Harling that
Yeah.
I was telling you about got checked out as the CO of,
Yeah.
him and I were good buddies, and it was Frank and Lyle sort of thing, and not
Yeah.
when nobody else was around.
Yeah.
And he was a heck of a good guy. So anyway, he was the CO of Downsview at the time, and
Yeah.
I was in the hospital, and I said to the doctor, I said, yeah, I sure like to go home for Christmas.
Yeah.
Well, he said, if you can get a ride home, he said, I'll sign a pass for you. See, and I'm stretcher born, you know,
Gee,
I'm right in the cast.
yeah.
I weighed probably about 400 pounds, you know, with the cast and everything else. So
Good.
2 inches plaster all the way around me.
All right.
So anyway, I phoned up Lyle.
Yeah.
I said, sure, this is your old buddy Frank. I said, I need a trip.
Yeah.
He figured by flying, you see.
Yeah.
He said, well, I don't fly anymore. I said, this is not flying. I said, I'm in hospital here in Toronto and in Sunnybrook, and I said, I'd like to go home for Christmas. I said, if I get transportation home, they'll authorize me to go.
Yeah.
He said, when can you go? I said, well, you just tell me when you're going to be here, and I said, I'll go. So 2 days before Christmas, I said, well, the 23rd, I said, so they signed the pass and got a nice brand new Pontiac ambulance, drove up there.
Boy. Yeah.
He took me down on my stretcher and you know, put me on the, and away I went to Camp Borden.
Yeah.
That was just lovely. I'm home.
Yeah.
All the family there to greet me, 4
Yeah.
kids and my wife, and
Yeah.
they got me to the PMQs. They couldn't get me in the PMQs because the stretcher and the cast wouldn't bend around to go through the doors. There was the 2 doors offset.
Yeah.
So here I am out in the lawn on the stretcher. So they called, the CO was a great guy, Group Captain J.D. Symes, a heck of a
Yeah.
nice guy. And they all knew about this thing, this
Sure.
guy coming home in an ambulance. And so call this construction engineering section. Come up here. So they come up there and they took the window sash, took the whole window right out.
Right out.
Put me through the window, put the window back in, and put me on the living room there. I stayed for Christmas. 4 days I stayed home for Christmas.
Oh, isn't that? And they had to take the window out again. Out you went.
Oh, yeah. And so when every day I had to be turned twice, you see. So the boys in my section, they'd come over and rotate me on my cast. And,
Yeah,
and the doctor said, is there a nurse handy there? I said, yes. My next door neighbor, his wife is a retired nurse.
Uh-huh.
That's all we want to know. He said, so they gave me the medication, and my boys from the section come over and turned me over.
Yeah.
Until my Christmas was over, and of course I'm just laying there like a dummy. I couldn't do anything. So anyway, back I went to Camp Borden, but this time I went back in a big, brand new Cadillac ambulance.
Oh,
They-
did you?
they basically just got a Cadillac. And
Oh, yeah.
Now a big Cadillac ambulance, boy. I
That was
just felt
great,
like
eh?
back in the hospital, and it was very memorable and very appreciative of what people had done for me.
Because it broke
And
the long
I
stretch.
lost track of where Lyle went after I went back there. I phoned and thanked him for the trip, but I lost track of him after that. But
Yeah.
that was my little tour at Camp Borden.
Yeah.
So I had a little more to that story. 2 weeks ago, I got a call
Yeah.
from a friend, or a guy that just said, "Are you Flight Sergeant Frank Honey?"
Yeah.
I said, "Well, I'm not Flight Sergeant Frank Honey." I said, "I'm Frank Honey now."
Yeah.
He said, "I see your picture in the Air Force magazine where you carried the flag for the cenotaph dedication in Trenton, Ontario." I said, "Yeah, I did." He said, "You don't know who I am, do you?" I said, "No, I don't." He said, "I'm David Geddes." It took a while to relate. My God, I said, that was a fellow that killed in the car accident that I was in.
Yeah.
He'd phoned me because he saw my picture and he wondered if I was the same guy. He said, "I can't find out anything about my father's death." He said, "Could you enlighten me?" He said, "I'm coming down to Nova Scotia just purposely to find out." I said, "Well, I'll
Gee
fill you out
whiz.
whatever I can."
Yeah.
So he's the mayor of Collingwood, Ontario.
For heaven's sake.
So I said,
Isn't
"Well," I
that
said, "I'll
amazing?
tell you, the best I can. I can remember it all.
Yeah.
I never
Yeah.
went out until I put me in the ambulance after the accident."
Yeah.
And he was 6 weeks old when his dad got killed, and he never knew his dad. So, but he phoned me after all these years, and
To
he saw my
find out,
picture there.
yeah.
So I thought that was.
That was, isn't
Quite
that?
moving,
Yeah. Well, you.
So
You
anyway,
have
that was a
stories.
story on that one. But anyway, I'm hoping that if he comes down here, because I'd like somebody to get a picture of him and I together.
oh,
you know.
sure,
I've got a picture of the funeral. I couldn't go to the funeral for his
No.
dad. And the other guy who was driving the car, and we were driving the car. You ever seen a mini miter convertible?
No.
Mini miner convertible is what as big as that table. 3 of us were in that, and convertible at that, and no
Yeah.
street belts in those days. And we got hit broadside, and
Oh,
the guy, Dave was in the back, and
Yeah.
he broke his neck.
Yeah.
And the driver of the car was Frank Dunn, an ex-prisoner of war who
Yeah.
had been shot down during the war, and the only survivor of the Lancaster crash, the only survivor.
yeah.
And he survived that crash too. Well, a little cut in his forehead, that's all he got. And I'm still in correspondence. He's 90-some odd years old in a
Is he?
veterans hospital
Oh, my
outside of
gosh,
Edmonton.
yeah.
So I do a lot of letter writing,
Yeah,
or
you must.
correspondence.
Yes, correspond.
Anyway, so
Now,
Frank-
can we get you to Nova Scotia?
Yeah, I'm coming there. So anyway, I had my years at Camp Borden,
Yeah.
and the Argus was just coming to Greenwood then.
Yeah.
They said, well, you know, you're qualified on a 3350 engine, which was
Yeah.
in some of the other airplanes.
Yeah.
The Argus has got a 3350 engine in. You're posted to Greenwood, Nova Scotia.
Uh-huh.
Good.
Yeah.
So I came down the valley here.
Yeah.
When the Argus first came,
Yeah.
I enjoyed it here very much.
Did you?
When I
Yeah.
first came, I lived in Lawrencetown on a farm.
Yeah.
Looked after the farm, 100-acre farm for a while, just not just the house I looked after.
Oh,
The
yes.
rest of it
Now,
was
how old were you now?
then that
Yeah.
would be 19. I came to here in 1957.
Okay.
When the Argus first came, 1957.
yeah, all
I
right.
came to Greenwood.
Yeah.
And then I moved from Greenwood up to Wilmot,
Mm-hmm.
where I am now,
Yes.
except close to where I am now, put it that.
Yeah,
I bought
yeah.
a little tiny house
Did
up
you?
in Wilmot.
Yeah.
And the 4 kids and the wife and I, and it was really too small.
Yeah.
It was only had 2 rooms in it.
Oh,
and,
my
but
heavens.
those
Yeah.
time, Greenwood was building up, and there was just no place. Any roof over your head was
Was,
a godsend.
yeah.
And I said, I'm not going to move my children into PMQs again. I only came from PMQs, permanent married quarters, was
Yes.
Camp Borden. I spent 7.5 years.
Yeah,
there.
and-
The children are not free in PMQs, in
No.
my estimation.
No, sure.
So I said, I'm going to buy my own place. So I bought this little place, $2,500, and that was a lot of money in them days.
Oh, it sure was. Yeah.
So I bought this little place, about an acre and a half of land. I spent the first winter there, and I was going to build onto it and everything else. Then my neighbor come up here, an elderly couple. They got to know fairly well, and they visit us quite often. They were living in the place I'm living now. They had no hydro, no water, no nothing in their place. And they'd come in and they'd put the switch on the wall, and gee, a light would come on. They said, gee, we're still using candles and coil oil lamps
Yes,
in our
yeah.
place. She said, and go into the toilet, and flush the toilet, and everything is fine, We're still going outside and all this
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
She said, Charlie, she said, this is Gladys Wiles. She said, Charlie, she said, we should have some of these conveniences.
Yeah.
But Charlie said to me, Frank, he said, why don't we trade places? And I knew his place down there.
Yeah.
I said, well, gee whiz, Charlie. I said, I can't afford any other move. He said, well, we'll talk price later on. Let's make a deal first about trading. I said to the wife, and I said, well, how would you like to move down to Wiles' place? It's pretty rough. I said, well, the first year will be rough. I said, we'll try to make good, all right.
Yeah.
So we moved down to Charlie's place. He moved to my place.
Yeah.
So I said, well, how about the finances? He said, look, let's make it legal. You give me $1 bill, and I'll give you $1 bill, and that's our legal tender, he said.
Oh,
and that's
my
what's on my
gosh.
deed. $1 I bought my place for.
Boy, isn't that neat?
And I bought 24 acres, and the house
Yeah.
is 200 years old, built 1801.
Oh,
The
my
house is-
gosh.
It had no, as I said, no plumbing, no
Yeah, but I
facilities
bet it
at
has
all.
now.
And I've got all the facilities I want now, and
Yeah.
I wired it myself. I never wired a house in my life before. I wired it,
Did
put the
you?
plumbing in,
Did you?
and I've been there ever since in that house.
Isn't
And I
that
said, if this is Nova Scotia, I'm going to retire in Nova Scotia.
Good
So
for
I
you.
said, here
Good.
I am. I'm staying here.
Good.
And every day I drove to Greenwood.
Yes.
And I loved the people around here. The people
Yeah.
were just great. Everybody
Great
helped me
people,
the best
yeah.
they could.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I moved from Lawrencetown up to the little house I had there with a tractor and a hay trailer. all furnished on a hay trailer.
A trailer,
and
and
a
brought you
little
up
pony
there.
tractor
Yeah.
dragged us all the way up
Isn't
there.
that great?
Because those moves you had to pay for
Yeah,
yourself.
sure.
So this didn't cost me a little bit of
Yeah,
fuel. So
okay.
anyway, went into the old homestead there.
Yeah. Now at the base, are you working with search and rescue?
No,
No.
I didn't work at search and rescue. I worked on the Argus all the time.
All the time, okay.
When I went right to the engine bay,
Yes.
I'm ahead of the story.
Okay.
I was in charge of the line crew, which is towing airplanes for the first year.
Uh-huh.
I had crew to move airplanes from point A to point B.
Point
they'd
B,
say,
yes, right.
And so then they said, well, you're qualified on the engine. Who's
Yeah.
in the engine bay?
Yeah.
So I was in charge of the engine bay. 2 I see the engine bay.
Yeah.
And we built up all the Argus power plants. We had 18 of them built up. We got pictures of all the 18 power plants, all built up ready for quick installation on the Argus. We could take an airplane engine out and back in just a matter of a few hours.
Yeah.
And we didn't have to build them up. They were already built up. Just attach them to the firewall and hook them up, and away you go. So I was in that for quite a spell.
Yeah.
And then from there, I went over in charge of the maintenance, the whole maintenance of the Argus,
yeah.
complete, the airframe, engine, and
All of
everything
them,
else.
yes,
That was
okay.
over there for
Yeah.
a couple of years. And then I went overseas. My
Yeah.
next trip was overseas to Bad Solingen, Germany.
Oh.
I went over there in 1971,
Yes.
and to work on this airplane here, the Starfighter.
Oh, good. This
And
fellow.
that, I had a course at Cold Lake first on the Starfighter. Well, going from an Argus to that, this to the Argus is this one here. That's
Yeah.
a big airplane,
And
and
that's
that's just you think you could pick it up and throw it away.
Throw it
but,
away,
but
yeah.
it's not so.
No,
It's a fantastic airplane.
Yeah.
I was very, very nervous of going on the 104.
Oh,
I
I'm
said
sure, yeah.
I hadn't too much experience on jet engines in a way. I had
Yeah.
on the Goblin engine, which is in the Vampire.
Yeah.
That's the only one I had experience on. I didn't work on the Sabre, which had the J47 in,
Yeah.
or the CF100, which had the Rend in.
Yeah.
But I was stuck on this one here, and this one here was I was
Big-
nervous.
fast
But I had
aircraft.
one, the best crews I could ever have.
Yeah.
They did the work. I just had to supervise, and
Oh, okay.
they made me
How
look
many
good.
guys fly that? Just one?
Just
fellow?
one guy.
It's
except,
a fighter. Yeah. Yeah. Boy,
Heck
this
is
is,
it.
they say that was that killed a lot of fellows, that plane.
it wasn't the airplane; it was the people flying it.
Was
They shot a lot of Widowmaker. I didn't.
Yeah, the Widowmaker. Yeah.
It's not right. It's,
No.
most of the time it was caused by the. There's the
pilot.
airplane I flew, twice the speed of sound, and that airplane right there.
Wowee, isn't that
Over
something?
1,400 miles an hour.
Yes, we'll show you
test
this
pilot
later.
and I.
Later
That's
on.
the same airplane, but that's a single cockpit, and that's a dual. We only had
Is
two
it?
duals.
Oh, I see
I went
that.
up on the
Yes,
test flight, and
yeah,
we did.
that's a
We
bigger
did
thing here.
50,000 feet over the Alps,
Yes.
and dived it from 50,000 feet down to 5,000 feet, and we did over Mach 2. So they give me a special. There's my Mach 2 pin.
Pin, of course. Yeah.
And they give me a little diploma and all that,
Yeah.
because
Oh, that's
not too many
great.
guys over 50 years age fly Mach 2.
Fly, no.
So anyway, I got a picture of my airplane doing Mach 2.
Too good.
That was
Now, where are we?
We're, over in
at-
Germany.
Yes. What? We're over Germany.
Yeah, I
Yes,
went over to
okay.
Germany on the 104.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed my tour over there very much. I lived off the base all the time. I lived on the what they call the economy,
Yes.
and I met a lot of German families who were just
Yeah,
super.
yeah,
There was
super
no
people. No.
animosity towards the
No,
Second World War
no,
vets
no,
at all.
no.
I traveled extensively. I bought a new car over there. As a matter of fact, I bought a brand new Volvo for $3,000 American dollars.
Did you?
3,000, brand new.
Brand new.
Delivered
Oh,
right to from Sweden, delivered right to my door.
Isn't that true?
And
yeah.
I brought it back to Canada with me.
Yeah.
So anyway, I did extensive touring over there. As I said, I visited
Yeah.
these prisoner of war or concentration camps.
Yeah.
I traveled the whole route that I traveled during the Second World War, right from the
Yeah.
beachhead right up to Lunenburg,
Yes.
and
Lunenburg, where you were.
where we wound
yeah.
up.
Yeah.
And as a nice additive to it, this friend of mine, who was my airframe tech, my rigger, he came over from Canada, and we both traveled together in the car, just the
Isn't
two of
that
us together.
neat?
We toured the
Oh,
whole thing.
that's
He even found the slit trench that we dug during the Second
Yeah,
World War. You
yeah.
could still see the depression in the ground.
Oh, isn't
And that's where I picked up this piece of wire mesh that I have at home on the
Yes,
runway.
yeah.
It was some French farmer was using it for part of a gate. Well, I had a pair of cutters in my car, and I just cut a little chunk of it off. So I had to bring it back to Canada. So that's it. So I had a real good tour over there. I visited Spain.
And you
Italy.
worked, you were working there.
Oh yeah, I was in
yeah,
charge
sure,
of
yeah.
I was in charge of the recovery for these airplanes.
Yeah, okay.
And this is where I got this one here. I got a good show for
Oh,
my effort
that's
on that. I
great,
brought
yeah.
that down here. And that's
Good.
by Air Commodore Schultz, who was
Yes.
the chief of safety. Came over to Canada.
yeah.
He came over from Canada to present with that to me
To
because
you.
I
Oh, yeah. Oh,
have a
that's
little
great.
thing I did. I
Yeah.
felt it was part of my job. He said, "No, it's past your job to do things."
How
like
long
that.
were you in Germany?
4 years.
4 years.
Just 4 years and a little bit.
Boy, that's quite a tour.
And
yeah.
I enjoyed it.
But you
immensely.
enjoyed it, yeah.
And so after my tour in Germany, as I said, I did a lot of traveling there.
Now, you had your wife with you?
Oh yes,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
my wife.
Just your wife, no kids?
No kids.
No.
No, the kids were all going to school here or
Yeah, of
else go to
course.
school.
Yeah.
So they all stayed. My daughter lived in the
Yeah.
homestead with
Yeah.
her husband. They got married and lived in the homestead, and they had their first baby born in the homestead there. They call it the homestead.
Yeah.
The old house.
Yeah.
And she was She was a lab tech in the Middleton Hospital, and he worked in the co-op in
Oh,
Middleton.
yes, okay.
And so they lived there, and I said, look, all you got to do is pay the hydro bill and telephone bill. No other.
No other
I
expense.
said, I'll pay
Isn't
their
that great?
taxes and everything
Yeah.
else, just to give you a chance to build.
Yeah.
So, do their own thing.
Yeah.
So I came home one day. They moved into their brand new house in Nicktar the next day.
Oh,
they
isn't
built
that
that house
great? Yeah.
in the interim in the
Isn't
4
that
years
great?
away, moved
Yeah.
in their brand new house.
So now you're back. Okay. Yes. All right. We have to come to an end, I'm afraid, Frank, because
Okay.
of time. Okay. So now you're back in Nova Scotia
Yeah.
after your German trip.
Yes.
Now, what do you do? Quickly?
No.
We wind it up quickly, can you?
Yes,
Yeah,
I went back, employed at Greenwood,
Yes.
and I was supposed to come back for retirement because I
Yeah.
was, up to the age
Sure.
limit of
Yeah.
50.
Yeah.
And so I only worked for a short time at Greenwood,
Yeah.
and lo and behold, they promoted me again. That gave me another 3 years in the,
Oh my
in the
gosh.
Air Force.
Yeah.
So I said, gee whiz, I said, I don't know if I'll accept this promotion or not. I said, I plan on getting out.
Yeah.
I had over 35 years in there.
Yeah.
So he said, well, think about it. I said,
Yeah.
well, I'll talk to the wife. So
Yeah.
I went home, we discussed it, and she said, well, if they're going to stay here at Greenwood, that'll be all right.
Yeah.
So I went back, told the boss, said, yeah, I said, I guess I'll take it. But I'm staying here at Greenwood.
Yeah.
He said, well, you said you call a hard shot, don't you? I said, well, I said,
Oh.
I said, I've had enough moves for my
Yeah.
career.
Yeah.
So anyway, okay, Frank, he said. So that was fine, Danny.
Yeah.
Well, 3 weeks went by, so I didn't get a posting to Winnipeg.
Oh my heavens.
I've been selected by all the Air Force as
Yeah.
the Air Command Chief Warrant Officer, and that looks after all the
Everything,
troops on,
yeah.
the, on, the,
Oh,
on the
that's
ground. And you're
great.
on the move continuously then.
Big honor.
I said, bring Winnipeg here, and I'll take the job. Otherwise, I'm going to get out of the Air Force.
Oh, really?
So they said, oh, it's not that bad. I said, I'm
Yeah.
not taking the job. I said.
Yeah.
So I stayed at Greenwood, and I was in charge of servicing here
Yeah.
of the Argus. I never got qualified on the Aurora because it was I knew I would only have
Yeah.
a short time on it, so I
Short
said,
time,
just
yeah,
don't get me
yeah.
qualified now.
Okay.
So I started up a shop here called the Quality Assurance Section,
Yeah.
and that section is still running today.
Is
It
it? Yeah.
oversees the jobs done on different different
Yeah.
airplanes, the maintenance done on airplanes.
Now you're retired.
I'm retired.
And are you
I-
having a good time?
Oh, listen, I couldn't have a better time. I've traveled extensively since
Yes, I
got-
know that. I saw that.
Since I got out,
Yes,
and
yeah.
I'm living on the old homestead and enjoying it immensely.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So,
Well, I want to thank you very much for coming here and giving us possibly the best interview we've had. So it's just most informative. I mean, I don't mean that the others weren't, but you have so much information in your story, and it certainly goes on a bit.
Austin,
And I wanna
it
thank
was
you.
my pleasure. Austin, it was
Bless
my
your
pleasure.
heart, sir. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been interviewing today, and since yesterday, we have been interviewing Frank O'Honey, who has just a marvelous story to tell. And I hope you enjoyed as much as I did listening to it. And now, just before we go, I have a few thanks to do. I'd like to thank Eastlink, who, that's our camera boys, the cameras, and this building that we work in. That's given to us free of charge to help get these vets interviews. I'd also like to help and thank the Legion and my partner in all this, Larry Caldwell, who is he's just a brick through it all, which is that these are difficult to put together. He has to get the people, interview them before I do. And I want to thank the Legion itself. And to you, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll be back to see you again on another tape. Thank you.